Welcome to How to Facilitate a Group Discussion. First, I'm going to talk about what are some scenarios that you would need to facilitate a group discussion in. I'm going to talk about some of the ways that group discussions go wrong and get off track. I'll share a little bit about my experience with group discussions, and then I'll share some strategies and tactics for you to become a great facilitator if you're not already. There are lots of reasons to facilitate a group conversation, a group discussion. Sometimes we use them to generate ideas, to brainstorm, to create something new, and often we use them to solve a problem or meet a challenge. Now, the problem is, believe it or not, we have a belief that group discussions are actually more productive than they usually are. Research shows that most of the time, groups don't come up with as great of ideas as individuals, unless the groups are really well facilitated. And in fact, research shows that groups are plagued by lots of problems. Groupthink is one of them. What often happens is a group of people get together and the most mediocre ideas win. This is an example of a quote I once heard. I wish I knew how I could ascribe it to. It said, "Search the town and search the cities, you'll find no statues of committees." And it's funny and it's also true. Most of the time, individuals come up with better, more unique and original ideas than groups do. But there are ways to structure groups so that you get the benefit of individual wisdom and ideas and creativity, plus you get the input and buy-in of a group of people. And that's what I'm going to share with you how to do here. By the way, I created a white paper over a decade ago called The Perfect Brainstorm. And it was all about how to manage group conversations and brainstorms. And actually, I have a video about it that you can check out too, which gives you a very specific process to follow. I'm not going to take you through my specific process. Instead, I'm going to take a more general approach, and instead of focusing just on brainstorming, how to facilitate a group discussion. All right? But if you're interested in brainstorming, go check out that other video. So what does a group facilitator do? Well, in my opinion, and based on my experience and my homework, I believe that the job of a great facilitator is to keep the conversation on track, to make sure that it reaches a successful outcome, to enforce the guidelines by which you'll be doing the conversation, to enforce the values and the standards of the conversation, and to ultimately be responsible for the outcome of the whole conversation. So what makes a great facilitator? Well, the first thing is you've got to be really clear what is a successful outcome. Remember, begin with the end in mind. You want to set the intention. Now, you may be the actual person organizing and setting the intention, or you may be hired by somebody else to do it. But either way, your responsibility is to make sure that there is a clear intention that you will be trying to achieve through this process. The second thing a great facilitator does is designs a structure and an outline for the conversation. So in my brainstorming guide, for example, I shared that a great facilitator sets the welcome, sets the tone, establishes the timeline, establishes how much time will be available for each thing that you're going to do, and comes up with the overall run of show is another way to put it. Like, how are you going to execute this conversation? And by the way, before I keep going, I do want to take a moment to invite you to please like this video, subscribe to my channel, maybe even shoot me a note below, let me know how this is landing for you. The third thing you might be asked to do as a facilitator, although not always, is to gather the people. And when I say gather the people, I not only mean inviting the people to the table, but also enrolling the people in the vision and in the intention of the experience. So you might be reaching out to people by email or by phone and inviting them to participate in this activity together. And in order to do that, I suggest sharing the vision that you've come up with and the intention for the meeting so that people understand why they're doing it and what the value of it is. The next thing a great facilitator does is establish the ground rules for how it's going to work. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take turns, or first everyone is going to go and come up with their own personal brainstorming list, and then you're going to bring it to the group and present it. Or you're going to break up into teams, and the teams are going to do this. A great facilitator establishes the guidelines of how this is going to go, and also the guidelines of behavior. So for example, one of the things that I learned early on is that in a brainstorming session, people can sometimes forget that the goal is to brainstorm and come up with a whole bunch of ideas. Someone will come up with an idea and will throw it on the whiteboard, and then somebody else will say, but that'll never work because of this. So one of the guidelines that I set at the beginning and that I gain agreement for from everybody there is we will not edit these ideas in process. No quashing of ideas. And I write it on the board, no quashing, and everybody agrees not to quash. And that way, when the idea comes up and somebody tries to shoot it down, I go, hey, remember, no quashing, got it? And I do it in a way that's positive and uplifting. I'm not like, angry at somebody. And so that's what a great facilitator does. They enforce the rules and the guidelines that they've set while also maintaining an uplifting and inspiring environment. Now, I'm going to take an aside here and say I think it's really important and powerful and effective to come up with a set of written guidelines in advance, lay those out for everybody, gain agreement on those guidelines, and then print them out and place them in front of each individual. For example, no quashing. One of my guidelines that you feel free to borrow is that we don't use the word should. We should do this, you should do that. I try to edit out the word should from our vocabulary because I feel like it brings the energy down and it creates a different kind of vibe than what I'm trying to accomplish. So another thing that I do is I let people know that every idea is a good idea, not because it's the right idea or the one we're going to use, but because every idea can lead to another idea. And I even share an analogy of a bonsai tree. Like a bonsai tree has to grow before you can prune it down and turn it into something beautiful with a gorgeous shape. If you start to prune it too young or too soon, it might never grow big enough for you to create something beautiful from it. It's very similar to brainstorming. You don't want to edit too early. So I highly recommend coming up with some communications guidelines, some behavior guidelines that people agree to up front. That's something that a great facilitator does. And then finally, as a facilitator, you're facilitating the conversation. That means you're like the referee. You're calling on people. You're letting people know, hey, let's let so-and-so have a chance to share. We haven't heard from this person. What are you thinking? What did you write down on your list? Your job is to make sure that you are cultivating the wisdom of the group and that you're bringing forward the best ideas, that you're enforcing those guidelines, you're looking at the time, making sure that you're starting and stopping, that you're getting everything accomplished, that you're somehow capturing and synthesizing the ideas, whether that's you doing it on a whiteboard or somewhere else, or you've hired someone, this is what I do, that's just there to listen and capture and organize the notes. And then, of course, one of the things that you're going to do as a facilitator, sadly but true, is you're probably going to have to manage issues and problems. You're going to have to deal with personalities. You're going to have to deal with breakdowns. She doesn't listen to me. You always do this thing. That's part of your job, and that's why I recommend making sure that you show up energy rich so that you can be your best self, and that'll help to create a coherent atmosphere that other people can align to, that other people can entrain to. Your energy sets the tone and the tenor of the group discussion. I hope this was helpful for you. If you want to turn your business into an opportunity to do facilitation and masterminding and brainstorming, then I'd love to help you figure out how to monetize that. We can connect at superstaractivator.com/go.